Hi, I'm here with Chris Denelle of Denelle Law, and we are going to be talking about the value of hiring a real estate attorney. All right, tell me what you're worth.
Oh, well, I can't do it in this short a video. We need to add some time on. So, I think it's a great topic, right? So, real estate attorneys, attorneys versus real estate attorneys. So, it's something that you'll want to know the difference between your general practice attorney and a real estate attorney. Okay, so it's kind of a niche thing. Just like doctors have their things that they work on, right? So you have folks that work on, dentists work on your teeth. You have orthodontists, podiatrists, brain surgeons, right? You want someone that's going to be working in that sphere, really, so they know exactly what's going on. Because as you know, it's a pretty small state that we work in here, and it's a small bar too, right? And generally speaking, we know how to work with the other folks in this area. But if you get a general practitioner to do your closing, a lot of times you find that there can be delays, right?
They're just doing it on the side as a favor to a friend.
Yeah, it's like your cousin's aunt's best friend or something like that, and I get it. The loyalty's awesome. You want to have someone that you want to give them the business, and as small business owners like Rachel and myself, we can appreciate that. However, for the efficiency of the transaction and the multiple parties involved, I think it's really important to have someone that focuses on this area of the law, so that way you can ensure that you have an efficient transaction. Because if you have someone that's not really sure how the process goes along, it can really kind of slow things down. I'm sure you've had it happen before, right?
Yeah, so I had a client that was from New York, and they were concerned about attorney fees because I think attorney fees in New York are like super high compared to Rhode Island. And I was trying to encourage them to work with one of my attorney partners, and he decided he was going to just go with someone from Google that seemed like the prices were good. And it was really difficult for me to communicate with that person because I don't think they're used to like the realtor back and forth and being super involved in the transaction like I am.
Right.
But a year later he called me and he's like, the attorney never settled our water bill.
Yeah.
So it just sat there collecting interest and everything, so they weren't happy about that. But I've been able to, usually when my clients go under contract or even in a buyer consultation or a seller consultation at their house, I always offer that I do have attorney partners such as Chris that can help them out. And the reason why it's important that I have a working relationship with Chris and his team is because of situations that come up. So for example, the day of closing, the tenant never vacated. Or you pull up and the person's still moving out of their house, and you're supposed to be signing in an hour. Now, in those situations, I'm calling Chris on his cell phone saying, hey, we've got an issue, we need to work this out. And then Chris knows me, he knows we have a closing coming up, he's answering the phone, and he's working in our best interest to get the issues resolved. And that's why, that's your value to me, anyway.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And communication is huge, right? And as an office that primarily focuses on real estate for the most part, that's one thing that we take pride in. Also, our systems that are in place, right? So we know how to take the file, open it up, and get it moving, get the title exam ordered right away. So that way, if something pops up on title, we can get to work on that. We can have conference calls. Okay, it's not just sitting on the back burner, and then all of a sudden, a week before closing, the lender says, "Hey, where's title?" That's not an ideal place to be. We never want closing to be delayed due to title, right? Now, there may be title issues that could delay closing, but just getting title back, that doesn't really make much sense on our end. But that's something that you'll see will happen because, again, other folks aren't used to getting a file in, turning it around. So it's something that we take a lot of pride in, right? And we just want to make sure that we communicate effectively. If an issue like that pops up, right, like the morning of closing, we can reach out to the other attorneys in the state, the seller's attorney. We know exactly what would be a reasonable kind of scenario to make this work out. So either we can get it closed, we can delay the closing appropriately, we can have seller credits, whatever it may be to make sure that our clients are protected and the transaction is not going to to implode, right? We want to be problem solvers, not problem makers, right? That's the big thing.
And what are some of the things, I mean, we have these one-off scenarios that happen every once in a while with like, you know, bad walkthroughs and stuff like that. But in a typical transaction, we go under contract, they agree that they're going to work with you, I send you the executed contract. What are like some of the steps from there that brings you value to the transaction as well?
Yeah, so absolutely. I think the biggest thing is we get to work on it right away. So we're going to open up a file as soon as we receive the contract. Okay, we're going to touch base with you just to be sure that you don't have any questions. If you have any questions, for instance, if you're a first-time home buyer, you've never been through the closing process, you have no clue what a closing attorney actually does. You just think of it as getting paper cuts, passing papers, signing docs, right? But there's more to it. There actually is more to it. So we're going to order the title exam. We'll get the title back. The underwriter reviews the title. My office reviews the title. If anything pops up in that exam that should be of concern to a buyer, we're going to go ahead and reach out, all right? We'll have a conference call to make sure that you actually understand what you're getting into, okay? You bargain for a property. If you have something that comes up on title that it was going to affect the marketability of that property, we gotta have a conversation about that. So if something pops up that's a title issue that needs to be cleared, we know how to go about getting it cleared, right? So we can reduce the likelihood that we'll actually have to push closing, right? Everyone wants to close on time. Everyone's setting up closers, all right? They're having family come into town, whatever it may be, cleaners. Yeah. So we wanna make sure, if at all possible, we can get things done so that we can close on the date that the parties agreed to. So we're working along, we get the title in, we're working with the lender behind the scenes, we're sending out correspondence to the parties, okay? We're communicating with the seller's attorney, if any. If there's not a seller's attorney, we're going ahead and working on the title issues that need to be resolved for the seller, getting payoffs, making sure liens are paid off, if any. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and we're actively working on these things. But it's one thing that the buyer doesn't have to worry about what we're doing, and that's our goal. Right. You have enough to worry about, you know, you're moving your life, you're buying an investment property. You don't want to worry, hey, I wonder, did my attorney order title yet, right? Or you don't want your lender calling and saying, hey, have you heard from the attorney? We haven't received the title insurance commitment. That's not an ideal scenario. So when you have someone that works as a real estate attorney, and it's not just myself, there's other great attorneys in the area that focus on this area, they all have their systems in place, and that's where I think the real value comes from, is just experience. And part of our systems too, where you're talking about where the lender's asking the buyer questions and stuff like that, like the lenders that you and I work with, we're all on the thread as a team, so we know that the ball isn't dropped and everybody's getting what they need, and all of us are in communication the whole entire time to the closing table. So Chris, just walk me through, well, the first question, typically when something comes up on title, what percentage would you say it's mostly like rectifiable, like a tax discharge on the property wasn't recorded, or you know, something like that? Like those are just like clearable things, right? Yeah, absolutely. So if something comes up that needs to be taken care of on title, the majority of them. Okay, so I don't want to give an exact percentage, but you're talking.
Hold you to it.
Yeah, don't hold me to it, right? So the majority of things can be fixed, right? Some things may take time. If the longer it's been hanging out there, the harder it is to fix. Okay, and then there's some things that can't be fixed or will take a lot of time and effort to get fixed, such as like a bad foreclosure. You know, that's one that can pop up that can really kind of nix the deal, because they're gonna have to re-foreclose on the property, right? So the person that signed on the purchase and sale agreement technically may not own it yet, because the foreclosure wasn't done in accordance with the statute, and that's a really tough statute. So that's something, but the majority of the time we can fix it, okay? But when issues do pop up, that's when the likelihood of having to extend whatever it may be comes into play. But as long as, again, you're communicating with everyone, okay, so we're communicating with Rachel, with the lender, and just letting everyone know where we're at, that way clear expectations are set, and the communication is vital. And that's one of the things that I believe we bring pretty well here too. And most of the good real estate attorneys in the state do too.
Well, because you have Elise on your team.
That's right. So. I do. I have a rock star and Elise and Megan too. Yeah, it's pretty good, because if they were waiting on me, I'm sitting at this table all the time. It may not be as immediate, but we have the best support staff. That's right.
So just walk us through like 3 days before closing.
Yeah.
What are the expectations? Is the buyer hearing from you?
Yeah.
Final number, when they show up, what do they bring, that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're really gearing up for closing, that's when the communication is going to pick back up directly with our client, with the buyer, okay? Outside of those title issue things that we hope we don't have. No one wants to deal with those anyways, right? So we're going to start working with the lender to finalize numbers. We're going to start working with all the parties to coordinate logistics, right? So we can make sure that the seller signs their documents, make sure we actually have the seller documentation in time. And then we're going to start working on the numbers too, as far as getting a final number to the buyer, right? So if they have a lender, we have to balance CDs with the lender, make sure everyone's on the same page on that front. And then we'll go ahead and send out your final number along with how to get the funds to us, right? So it's never going to be a personal check typically, unless it's a very small
Or not
sum.
a suitcase full of cash, right?
No suitcases full of cash. We don't want that. If you could, just bring a cashier's check to us from the bank. We don't want to, I don't have a money counter. It'll take forever, right? And at least needs to respond to emails. So we don't want to be doing that. So we'll get a cashier's check. Sometimes folks like to wire. And that way they can arrange for having the funds available to us, and we'll set a time, and then the buyer does their walkthrough either the day before or morning of closing, show up here, and then we're going to sign some documents. And a lot of folks think it's a really difficult process to sign the docs, but it's not as bad as most people make it out to be, okay?
You just write your name 100 times, literally 100 times.
It may not be 100. Some folks have easier packages, right? There's some e-signing, hybrid model closing.
Yeah.
So it's not that bad. Most of the closing packages are very similar in nature, and that's what I'm here for too. I'm going to bring you through all the documents. Make sure you understand exactly what you're entering into with the lender, right? Because you're going to be in it, maybe even for 30 years. It depends.
And to bring with them, they just need everybody that's going to be on the mortgage to sign.
Exactly.
And the deed.
Yeah.
And then license and a checkbook if they have one, just in
Yeah.
case there's any tiny adjustments.
Yeah, it's always good to bring a personal checkbook as well, just in case there are some last minute adjustments. For instance, the seller, showed up at town hall and paid off the bill a day ahead, and they bring me a receipt and say, hey, this needs to be adjusted. We don't want you to have to get a new cashier's check. It's a small amount. Just bring that personal checkbook just in case. Always bring your license. There's going to be a lot of notarization going on, so we need to make sure you are who you say you are. And then, all borrowers need to show up, and all title holders on the property will need to show up as well. And then we get you through it.
And then it's done. You're a homeowner.
Absolutely. That's it. Well, we have more to do, but that's besides the point. You sign, head out, we'll take care of the rest.
All right, perfect. Any more questions about the closing process or the value of an attorney, feel free to DM us on Instagram.